Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Bullet, actually, the weekend edition of the Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, a couple of guys I always love to get a chance to talk with. On the right of your screen, Dan Wos, author of the Good Gun, Bad Guy series of books. I got one right here. That's Good Gun, Bad Guy 2. And then you're not going to see it as well, but Good Gun Bad Guy 3 is right here, although it's green and the green screen kind of covers up the lettering. He's got Good Gun Bad Guy 1. He's also the Loaded Mike Show. And then joining me as well, Charles Heller of Liberty Watch Radio. And Charles, this is his second time on the air with us. And Charles doesn't make a lot of appearances out in podcast land, so I'm very proud that he's decided to come back and join us. We didn't chase him off the first time. So, gentlemen, thanks for coming along, getting social media hooked up here so we can get input from viewers and listeners. Second here. All right, we are all hooked up. If you want to comment. If you're watching on the Polite Society podcast feeds, either Facebook or YouTube, you can comment on the live video, and we'll get your comment on the air. If you're watching anywhere else, Opslands or anywhere else that picks up the feed, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet, and we'll get those comments as well. We'll get them up, and we'll discuss them on the air. Gentlemen, it's been quite the week in Second Amendment media. First story I've got up here is now credit card companies, specifically meaning Mastercard, Visa, and American Express, are creating a code just for gun stores so they can track what you're buying when you go to a gun store. Now, they will not specifically be able to track whether you're buying a Glock 17 or a Ruger or a whatever, but they will know if you're at a gun store buying something from there. This is under pressure from the governor of California, governor of New York, and a few other places. What is not going to be tracked is if you spend cash or if you use a Discover card. Discover's not in on this. This is just confirmation to me I need to quit using Visa, MasterCard, and American Express as much as I can, and need to move my business as much to cash and Discover card as I can when I'm doing business with guns. What do you guys think? Dan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, well, I think so too. I can't wait for the next opportunity to go buy a gun with cash just to kind of defy this whole thing. Visa originally said that they were not going to do that, as it wasn't their job to police, who's buying what and where and report that stuff. Something happened after they made that public statement, because then they said, oh, well, we changed our mind. We will be participating in this new code for gun purchases. And it's going to apply to a lot of different stores, like sporting goods stores, where they don't only sell guns, they sell other things. So a lot of people are going to get caught up in that net. I don't see how it's going to solve any problems. It's not going to stop violence. It's not going to help anything, because most of the real bad guys aren't going to Dick's Sporting Goods to get their guns. So I think it's just another way to try to create some sort of gun registry that they know they're not supposed to be doing. But I don't know. I don't know how long. I don't know if it's going to last. I don't know if it's going to stick. But I guess we'll have to find out. We'll have to wait and find out.
Charles, what do you think, man?
Well, I don't think any of the real good guys are going to Dick's Sporting Goods anymore either.
That's true.
Not if they're well informed. Frankly, this is an attempt to control the uncontrollables. I mean, frankly, who gives a rat's round end if they track your Visa card or not? Of course, you can use cash, but then all they need to do is say, like we have a car wash here in Tucson, and it's all over the country called Mr. Car Wash, and they don't accept cash anymore. So I go there, and I always present them with a $20 bill, and I say, "Here's payment," and they say, "We don't take it." And I say, "Well, you either take this or give me a free car wash." And they say, "I'm sorry, we can't take your business." So I go around the corner to Octopus and pay my money, and it's cheaper there anyway. Like I say, if they decline cash, that's the rub. Now, the other thing you guys haven't mentioned, and I'm surprised nobody else has either, is you can go to Walmart and buy a gift card, a Visa, Mastercard, or American Express gift card, and then who gets tracked? I mean, I really think we're getting upset about the wrong things. I think we ought to be focused more on a lot of more clear and present dangers to the right to keep and bear arms than whose skirt Visa looks up. Because I frankly, uh, you know, to quote Hillary Clinton, at this point, what difference does it make?
There certainly is that. I just don't I don't appreciate the fact that they're, you know, when I have several cards, most of them debit. I do have a few credit cards, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the fact that they get, with my money, they get to control what I do. There's one of my debit cards that if I go to a casino and I want to take some cash out to play a few games at a casino, they'll shut my card off because the
Why?
casinos have their own special code. And they can read that code and say, oh, this is a casino. He doesn't need to be there. We're going to shut his card off. And I use that card very, very, very rarely. But
You know, I wonder if, pardon my interruption, but I wonder if that's a basis for a civil rights lawsuit.
could very well be.
Too
But
bad you're
I
not
don't
Jewish or
want this to
black. Or
happen
black.
with guns. Yeah, I don't want
No,
to
Yeah,
go to Shields and go to buy something from Shields, and all of a sudden one of my debit cards says, "Yeah, no, you're at a place that sells guns. We're not going to let this work there."
see, the way I look at this is I guess I disagree with Charles a little bit on the fact that you know, this we let this little thing go. We let bump stocks go. We let the ban on magazine capacity go because it doesn't really affect us a whole lot. We let all these little things go, and this is the way they nibble around the Second Amendment. So no, I'm totally opposed, and I think we should put effort. Maybe not every effort. I understand what Charles is saying. How let's focus on some of the big stuff, but I think we should put effort into stopping this because it seems like um, a violation of sorts where they're monitoring gun purchases, or they're attempting to monitor gun purchases. So although I agree with Charles, maybe not put our entire bet the farm on it, but put some effort into it to at least try to get rid of it. My opinion.
If I can push back for a moment,
Yeah,
I don't disagree with Dan. I don't disagree with Dan either, especially about the bigger stuff. But it's not my perception that we're leaving alone any of those other infringements. I think we're fighting them pretty hard. I know the Citizens Defense League has got an amicus brief in the Sixth Circuit. Let me silence this phone so it doesn't keep beeping on us. But the Citizens Defense League has got an amicus brief in the Sixth Circuit on the bump stock case. We're certainly not just letting these infringements go. California
Yeah.
is suing on assault weapons ban and also on magazine capacity. I mean, there's a holy jihad to fight for our rights on those other issues. I'm just saying, if you put it in perspective with those other things being a 60 or a 70, this is a 10.
all right.
Yeah. No. And I mean, I get it. I understand where Charles is coming from. I hate to see these things because it always looks like they're trying to get some sort of registry going on some angle, and yeah, but yeah, I think Charles and I are pretty much on the same page. I'm just a little bit more
Mhm.
concerned. I think that it could lead to
Get
other things.
I want to get a couple comments come in
Well,
here.
there's a
Uh,
butthurt factor, and when you're already very tenderized, there's it takes very little extra abrasion to cause it to cause pain.
Well, we've been tenderized, that's for sure.
Oh yeah,
uh,
they've relegated us to the tenderloin district. All right.
Yeah.
absolutely. Gun website says if the cars are going to monitor guns under political pressures, then what is the next vice or trending bad product the credit card companies will buckle under to address? That's a great point. The slippery slope argument. If this is where it starts, where does it end?
Well, and that's another. And
Well,
that brings up a great point. Go ahead, Charles.
I think you were probably going to say the same thing I was. Please go ahead, Dan.
Well, yeah. I mean, the idea there is, they can. So many times I've used my credit card in other states or other locations and use it a lot at once, and maybe not in the location where where I live. So I find that the credit card stopped working. I can't use it anymore. The credit card company literally shut it off because they thought it was being used
Fraud.
fraudulently. So they have that ability to shut it off like that. And you know, I don't like that idea. I just what if I want to go and I want to buy a bunch of ammo, a lot of ammo. you know, uh, they might see I just bought 2 guns the day before, and they might say this looks suspicious. Shut
Yes.
it off. So that's why I'm not for it.
Get a couple more.
I'm not for it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Charles.
I'm not for it either, right? I'm very much opposed to it. I'm just saying because it's fraught with a lot of danger. The only question is how does it stack up in the multiple challenges that we face? How does it stack up in the alignment of things that are arrayed against us?
Sure.
We get some more comments in here. Patrick Collins over on the Facebook side says China has done the same thing in their society. This is merely a government overreach attempt that will be ineffective in its intent. There are ways around this, as we mentioned as we were introducing the story. You can still use cash. You can still use. There's this Discover card's not in on this. So you can see if you have a Discover card, you can use a Discover card. You can still, I don't know, barter or whatever. There are still ways around this. And I'm going to get one more in here, 2 more in here. Mike White says, for some reason, this doesn't upset me that much as long as my purchase goes through.
Yeah, I don't know. As long as the purchase goes through. Well, yeah, that purchase might go through, but what about the next one?
Yeah.
That's the problem. Once that code is there, they know, or they have an idea of what you're buying. Like I said, you could be at a sporting goods place where they sell many different products, but if you're specifically at like a gun store, yeah. I don't know. I don't know how much more there is to say about this. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I think it gives the credit card company too much leverage. If they want to, I suppose if they want to loan me money on their credit card, it's their money. But I want to know if that's going to be their intent.
What we're missing here is who's pressuring them to do it. And this is coming largely from investment capital firms who are leaning on the credit card houses to do this. And the problem is not so much the credit card house itself; they're merely a conduit to abuse of our freedom. The people who are putting the pressure on to do it are the real concern.
Yeah.
Pete over at Gun Website says, devil's advocate. They will see guns are normal when they see how much money is spent on guns and ammo by so many people. They will see how normal it is to buy a lot of ammo to practice sight in, etc.
No, they won't.
I could see his point, but um,
No, they won't.
honestly, guns and ammo is still a fairly small part of my budget. If you look at my annual budget for my household, I don't spend even 10%. I don't even spend 5% of my budget
No, most
for
of
my
us,
house on guns and
most of
ammo.
us don't. We may stockpile things and slowly build an inventory, but we're not. Most of us are not hoard buying anything. Only the people brand new to it and who have a lot of money are doing that, and that's not most of the gun world.
I will say this: where I'm worried about is I will occasionally buy an AR for several $100s, and then a few days later I'll look at my ammo, and I do buy ammo in serious large bulks. I buy it once or twice a year, and I buy a lot of ammo when I do. And when I buy ammo, it could look, and I buy it off the internet. So obviously there's a card there somewhere. When I buy ammo, it will look like, for an amount, it will look like a gun purchase because I buy that much ammo at once. So that, if I put them close together, it's going to look like I'm buying a lot of guns. So anyway, let's go ahead and we're 15 minutes in. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. This one off of AmmoLand. This is a topic I am really passionate about. Firearms Policy Coalition announced the filing of a motion for summary judgment in its Suarez versus Evanchik lawsuit, which challenges Pennsylvania's prohibition on carry by individuals who've had their civil rights restored following prohibiting convictions. Plaintiffs in this action include Julio Suarez and Daniel Bindercup, whom the Third Circuit Court of Appeals sitting en banc has already held to be persons who retain their Second Amendment rights in a landmark plurality decision in Bindercup versus United States Attorney General. Basically what this is, guys, is when somebody commits a felony and gets their Second Amendment rights back, Pennsylvania doesn't recognize this. Firearms Policy Coalition is suing to make sure that Pennsylvania has to recognize if you get your Second Amendment rights back, federal, you get your Second Amendment rights back, period. Thank you. I used to be associated with Firearms Policy Coalition. Obviously now, as an employee of SAF, I am not associated with Firearms Policy Coalition anymore, but I still give them kudos for this. This is a good job on their part.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you do the crime, you do the time, and after that, your rights should be restored. I don't see why not, unless it's a situation where you're like in New York with, appointed Governor Hochul letting people out of prison early. That might be a different situation there, but I do the crime, pay the time, and isn't that the idea? And there's a punishment, there's a penalty for committing a crime. If the penalty suits the crime, like it should in our legal system, then why wouldn't the person get the rights back after they pay the penalty?
Yeah, that's just exactly it. They paid their debt to society. They ought to be able to exercise all their rights now.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree on that. The issue, though, is what they're trying to do is separate out all the categories so that they get more and more and more prohibited possessors. It's a clear strategy that's being executed here. And if it were, and the plain fact is, they're using the authority of government to deprive people of their civil rights. And as Justice Thomas said,
Oh, and he froze up.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to I'm trying to think where Charles was going. What did Clarence Thomas say? Is he talking about something in Bruin, maybe? Um,
I don't remember felons getting brought up. I know Amy Coney Barrett, when she was on the run up to getting confirmed, one of the things that was talked about is she was very much in favor of felons getting their Second Amendment rights back. She ruled originally that Second Amendment rights were to be restored to felons once they completed their sentence.
yeah. Like I said, the only problem I see is, you have these DAs with early release and all this bail reform stuff where, it just they, they need to get their system straight and make sure that the penalty equals the crime. Um, it's so messy. It seems like they want to let people out of jail early, and then they want to say that they don't recognize. I don't know. The whole thing is kind of messy to me. But I say, like, again, like, if you do the time, you should get your rights back. I mean, it doesn't just makes sense that way.
Yeah, Charles, you froze up. You were starting to say something about Justice Thomas, and then you froze up, man. Where were you going?
Yeah, I disappeared for a while. What I was saying is Justice Thomas pointed out that in the Bruin decision recently that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. It's on par with any other right. And
Yeah.
just as just as a person who has been a felon gets their right to vote restored, if their right to bear arms is restored, it's no different than any other right. It shouldn't be treated that way. Obviously, like I said earlier, it's an effort to pick off the exterior. It's the same type of effort that red flag laws are, to try and pick off various categories of people and put more and more and more people in the prohibited possessor class. But this is no different than the way we used to treat people of color between the Civil War and the Civil Rights Act. And it's very, very simple that it wasn't okay to do that to people of color, and it's okay to do it to people who own guns.
Yeah, and isn't it ironic how they want to give people who are incarcerated the right to vote? So that right they want to give, but then they want to take away the rights of people who have already paid their debt to society on
I want to
certain
point
things. So
something out.
they're gonna use it to benefit their political agenda, of course.
Of course. Yeah. I want to point something out, though, and that is, since the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court has slowly been practicing what's called the doctrine of selective incorporation. They've been selectively incorporating the Bill of Rights onto the states. They did that in 2010 with McDonald. 2008 proclaimed that the right to keep and bear arms was an individual right, not connected necessarily to malicious service. And
Right.
2010 incorporated that through McDonald, incorporated that on the states. So, and Bruin said it's not a second-class right. So all of these things are leading to a path where the states just simply have no authority to do what they're doing. And I think eventually, the state's abuse of our rights will be put out of its misery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then let me go on to our next story, and I think that dovetails real nice into our next story. This one is a John Petrolino article off of Bearing Arms. From the way it looks, the Dick Heller case against DC, where he's suing them to get rid of the magazine limitations, is done. It's over because DC gave in. And let me read just a little bit out of this. Defendants provided the attached notice of emergency and proposed rulemaking by the Metropolitan Police Department, promulgated on September 14th, 2022. See Exhibit A. It was effective immediately on signature and will be published on September 23rd, 2022 edition of the DC Register. The emergency and proposed rulemaking did change the regulation on how much ammunition one may bear while in the district. In the notice, the district publicly folded their hand, fearing imminent defeat, basically making Heller's lawsuit moot. And so it's basically Heller beat DC again. This is good. Not only is it good news because he won, it's good news in that DC seen he was going to win and folded. I certainly hope more states do. The DC is not a state; it's a protector. It's a what was it? A federal district. But I hope more states and more places do this. They see they're going to lose and they fold and save everybody a lot of money. But the good news, guys.
Can I comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Being named Heller, maybe I go first, but I gotta tell you that, the way it's been established now that the way you test the depends undergarment of the DC City Council is to sneak up behind them and yell Heller.
They don't like it.
Anyway,
No.
yeah, but it's they saw the handwriting on the wall. They saw the way Bruin went, and they knew they didn't have a leg to stand on. So that's why they folded. Also, DC's in a hell of a financial crunch, and they can't afford to have a whole bunch of litigation going on. So they did what they did. It's not surprising.
Dan, you want to comment on this one?
Well, I guess I'm going to go kind of in a little different direction. I'm just looking forward to see what kind of cases will be coming up in the future as a result of the historical tradition piece of Bruin. So that's going to change things too. I think there's going to be a lot more lawsuits. And I know in New York, and I'm not sure if you're going to get into any of the New York stuff, Paul, but I know in New York there's a whole bunch of stuff coming down on Hochul right now as we speak, and I've got some information, but I think Charles was right. They don't want these lawsuits. They probably want them, but they don't want to spend the money.
Well, they may want them, but they want them when they can frame them the way Miller was framed in 1939, right, where the plaintiff doesn't show up and only the government case gets presented. That's how they want them. They want to frame them as, we have a duty to protect people, and somehow taking some guns from some people some of the time somehow protects people. That's how they want to frame it.
Yeah, and Miller was interesting just in the idea that they said, correct me if I'm wrong, but they said, the shotgun was an 18-inch shotgun was not allowed because it was a weapon that would be used as militia use.
Yeah, it was not in common use by the military at that time.
No.
Right.
No, that's not that's not what Miller said at all. Miller said was a 1.5-page decision, and it basically referred it back to the district court because it said they had no evidence that the short shotgun was applicable to militia service. That was what it actually said. It didn't decide whether the shotgun was or wasn't. Right. It sent it back to the district court, at which point the case was moot because by then Miller was dead.
But what I thought was interesting about that was that by saying that, they were suggesting that had it been a militia or wartime type weapon, that it would be, that's what would qualify it by being a military style weapon. So what's interesting then is now they're saying, it's we don't want these weapons of war. These weapons of war are bad. But Miller, in a way, kind of said, that if it's not a weapon of war, it's unaccepted or unacceptable.
Right.
Yeah, because if you're going to be
That-
in a real militia, if you're going to be really defending the United States, you're probably going to want an M16 or an M4 that at least has select fire.
Yeah.
And those are currently verboten if they're made after 1984, or if they were made before 1984 and you don't pay a tax stamp for it.
86.
86. Pardon me. Brain doesn't always connect as quickly as it used to. You get a couple comments in here going back to the felon lawsuit story. That's the button I want. Robert says, in history, felonies that resulted in loss of rights were not malum prohibited laws. He followed up with, and when you completed your sentence, your rights were restored. And with given light to the Bruin decision and that they're going on text, history, and tradition, I think that's good news for former felons now in that they, with the possible exception of violent felons, are going to be more likely to be getting their rights back.
Also, people who are adjudicated mentally incompetent aren't going to get their rights back either.
Well, I'd kind of like to go off on that. If I am diagnosed with cancer and my doctors are good doctors and I follow their advice and I take the medicines they give me, I can beat cancer. I can become cancer free. If I have a mental defect and the doctors treat me and that mental defect goes away, why should I not be able to get my Second Amendment rights back?
Because of 18 U.S. Code 922A, I believe it's 18 U.S. Code 922. It may be below A, but it basically says the 68 Gun Control Act. It says people who are mentally defective, i.e., have been adjudicated incompetent by a court, there is no process for them to restore their rights. What would have to be, they'd have to amend 18 U.S. Code 922 to say people who have been adjudicated competent after a declaration of incompetency are now no longer prohibited. You'd have to change federal law for that, and I don't think.
Or
I'm sorry,
or sue because that isn't text, history, and tradition.
Yeah, to restore your rights by lawsuit, which is a long process. But I'm saying that's what it's based on right now. At least that's my understanding of what it's based on.
Sorry, I got to get this one in. Sorry, this is too good. So you're saying Democrats can't have firearms?
Well, remember we're saying adjudicated mentally incompetent, not just plain R. But there's plenty of Republicans who don't really support our rights. So I mean, while it's obviously true that there's more people on the left that dislike our rights than on the right that dislike our rights, there's plenty of them, and there's plenty of people who are real squishes about it, who can't answer a straight question about, hey, look, if a red flag law came before you, would you vote against it? Well, I'd have to see the law, depend on the circumstances, which way the wind was blowing, what my political contributors have to say about it. There's a lot of factors here.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen people in the Second Amendment community, I guess you would call it, who have expressed their support for certain things that I just thought were absolutely ridiculous. So
look at Jim Zumbo.
What was that, Charles?
Look at Jim Zumbo, the professional hunter that hunted all kinds of African game, and he said there's no reason in the world why anyone needs an AR-15, and he lost his job, a 30-year column he had in Guns and Ammo, or I think it was Guns and Ammo. They basically tossed him off the page. That Second Amendment community rose up and go, hey, no, we're not buying anything with his name on it. And then Ted Nugent rode to the rescue and educated Jim Zumbo, took him pig hunting with an AR. Suddenly he was convinced that the AR-15 was a great hunting rifle, and he kind of got back into some good graces.
Yeah, I am not a great hunter. I am not a I go hunting every several years. I don't even go hunting every year. And quite often when I go hunting, it's bird hunting. I go pheasant hunting. Uh, so, but I will say this: for hog hunting, hogs are sufficiently similar to humans in biologic makeup that an AR is a good weapon for hunting hog. I don't know that it's a great weapon for hunting deer. I know people that do it. But yeah, an AR for up to hog size, yeah, it's a great tool for hunting. Um,
Well, just change the upper to a 7.62 by 39, and you, for the most part, got a 30-30.
well, or you can get an AR-10 that goes even larger than that. You know, you
Sure.
can get an AR-10 with darn near any. I mean, there are AR-10s on 338 Lapua, which yeah. Let me and
Well,
Pete over at Gun Website's got a couple comments in here going to what you were talking about, Charles. Let me get this up in there. February 16th, 2007, Zumbo published an interview on his blog criticized the use of the AR-15 and AK-47 for hunting. Calls for his termination were received within 3 days. And February 19th, 3 days later, Remington Arms fired Zumbo. His online blog was discontinued for the time being.
mhm.
So, and then he provides a link there. So, for those of you on Facebook who are interested, go over to YouTube and you can hit that link. So,
Yeah, if you want to look at a picture of Jim Zumbo, just go in the dictionary and look under tone deaf.
yeah, absolutely. Let's the next story. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open a new tab in my browser here. This one hit this week, and we've covered it before, but I really think it bears more covering here on the weekend show. We can get into a little bit more. A new survey aimed at determining patterns of gun ownership and defensive gun use from Professor William English over at Georgetown University. It's much larger than most other surveys, with over 54,000 adult American respondents, of whom over 16,000 had personally owned guns. Digging into this, overall, Americans own in excess of 415 million firearms, consisting of approximately 171 million handguns, 146 million rifles, and 98 million shotguns. 30.2% of gun owners, or about 24.6 million people, have owned an AR-15 or similarly styled rifle, and up to 44 million such rifles have been owned, and about 48% of gun owners, about 39 million people, have owned magazines that hold over 10 rounds, and up to 542 million magazines have been owned. That 542 million magazines that have a capacity of over 10 rounds have been owned. What that study says to me is, going back to the original Heller decision and now to the Bruin decision, these things are absolutely positively in common use. And so in legal terms, the magazine bans and the bans on assault weapons or AR-15s have no chance because they are in common use, and the Supreme Court has already said you cannot ban weapons that are in common use. Charles, what do you think, man?
Oh.
Let Dan go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was just going to ask Paul if you can get me that link. I'd like to see that. And Georgetown University also did a study. I'm not sure if it's the same person, but they also did a study on defensive gun use, which showed about 1.67 million defensive gun uses per year. So I'd like to see that study you were just talking about, Paul, if you don't mind.
I just sent it to you in text message, and I'm going to put it in the Facebook and the YouTube comments sections so that If you want to see it, I'm sure there are YouTube and Facebook viewers that want to see it. Unfortunately, OpsLens and other places, I don't have a way to quickly get it to you, but and it's way too long for you to copy it off of a on-screen printout. So, but yeah, it's this is big, and this is it looks to be it was started last year. It's an annual survey. The first one was done in 2021 in smaller scale. This is much bigger, and then the article says it's going to continue annually at or at this level or above this level. So this is a good.
Oh, sorry. You said it was something like 56,000 people were surveyed?
Yeah. Let me go back to the story.
That sounds pretty significant to me.
54,000 adult American respondents.
That's a significant sample size.
Yes.
It should be definitive. And when you look at most quick polls, which are 1,000 people, and you're talking about within a state, 54,000 seems like a reasonable number. The other thing that strikes me, that jumps out at me, is 542 million magazines with over 10 capacity. Oh, come on. If there's 400 million guns in the United States, of which at least a half have a magazine or so, then there's got to be, and do you know anybody that owns an AR that doesn't have 10 mags? And do you know people who have 100 mags for their ARs? I would suggest to you that there's way more than 542 million such magazines in circulation in the United States.
I'm not going to give out specific numbers, but there is more than one AR in the Lathrop household, and let's just say there are more than 20 standard capacity magazines for the AR. There are more than two. There are more than 2 handguns that have standard capacity magazines that exceed 10 limits, that exceed 10 rounds. And there's more than 10 magazines for each of those firearms. So, and I'm not saying I don't think representative.
I don't think you're atypical, though, either, of people who own full capacity guns and who own AR pattern or other similar AR or AK pattern rifle or pistols.
What do you think, Dan?
Well, I know for every firearm that I have multiple magazines, even if it's 2 or 3. So I think that number 500 whatever million is low.
Yeah, it very well could be a low number. It's well, and think of this. It was a representative site is 50,000. 50. Whoops. Go back to that again. 54,000. That gets it within a few percentage points accuracy over the entire population of the country. What I would like to, and I would have to dig more than I have time to while we're still on the air, to see where the sampling was done. Was it in, the central United States? Was it in California? Was it in, was the sampling done where there are mag limits in states like New York, Massachusetts? How much of it was there? How much of it was in regular free America?
Yep.
Let's see here. And let me see. You get a couple, 3 more comments in here. And Gun Website says the Reload interviewed this survey's author last week. He also says, I know at least a dozen people who own over 100 mags. That is normal for shooting sports competitors and collectors. Yeah. And finally, if firearms magazines were not targeted by ignorant anti-rights thugs, then gun owners would not buy them in case they are banned in an attempt to do something. Well, I got to admit, some of the standard capacity AR mags I bought were because they were at a good price, and the thought was in my head, if somebody does go after these things, it would be nice to have them.
Yeah.
So, get that. And then let me see where we at. We got last story I got for today, and this one, Dan, this is right in your backyard. A new law restricting the carry of firearms in most public areas of the Empire State, speaking of New York, has an unintended consequence when it comes to historical commemorations. Following a 6-3 ruling this summer from the U.S. Supreme Court concerning New York's unconstitutional May issue concealed carry permitting scheme, state lawmakers scrambled to pass a flurry of new anti-gun bills in a matter of days. Breathlessly signed into law by Kathy Hochul, New York's unelected governor, these included New York Senate Bill S51001, which bans the carry of legally possessed firearms even with a permit in sensitive places. The thing is, S51001 sweeping lists our libraries, museums, parks, performance venues, schools of all stripes, and just about any facility owned by federal, state, or local governments. What that means for reenactors at New York's historical forts and battlefields is that while they may be welcome, their antique flintlocks, percussion muskets, pistols, and revolvers are not under a threat of a felony charge. Yeah, the last thing you want is a whole bunch of guys carrying flintlocks around. When was the last time they took down a 7-Eleven with a flintlock? I mean, come on.
This is one of those things. Go ahead, Charles. Go ahead, Charles.
I think what they're worried about is somebody might start a revolution.
Well, if you look at that list of sensitive locations that Hochul created, it's extensive. I mean, it's basically everything. Everywhere you go, somehow qualifies as one of those sensitive locations. So I'm not surprised that this happened. However, I happened to have talked to someone who is an actual one of those reenactors. He does that at one of these locations. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to say the location, but it's here in upstate New York. And the county in particular is not enforcing it. So I don't know if that was by approval from the state or if they're just taking on that decision themselves. But they've decided that it's ridiculous and they're not going to enforce it. So those people in that particular county can do those reenactments, and there will be no there'll be no prosecutions or anything like that. Repercussions, right? Good word.
Yeah.
Well, my worry there is the county is not enforcing it. However, that doesn't mean the state police can't come in and enforce it.
Right.
It's...
Yeah, I did hear something from the state level. I don't want to say this because I'm not positive on it, but I thought that Hochul in her infinite wisdom decided that sort of thing would be approved. I wish I had that article in front of me. I'm going to look while we're talking.
Okay, let me see here. And I've got maybe I got a comment that came in from gun websites. You want to know if I could post a pic on the screen, and the answer, Pete, is maybe. I'm working on it as we speak. It requires me to do some quick work here. And it's a good pic, so let me see if I can't.
Prestidigitation extraordinaire.
And the sheriff's departments really have the ability to make the decision on this stuff. As far as I know, sheriff's departments can say no. The state law violates the Second Amendment, and we're not going to do it. I mean, this is how we started getting some Second Amendment sanctuary counties and cities and things like that. Because I think the sheriffs, we may forget how much power the local sheriff actually has.
Yeah. The picture that Pete wanted me to post up on the screen, this is a dangerous individual right there. I mean, that guy looks like he's ready to go ahead and take out a 7-Eleven right there. So,
I mean, look, it's obvious the bayonet is fixed.
yes. Yes. But I do and let me put that up one more time because I want to point something out.
I wish I were still that skinny.
That I want that right behind him is a sign that says firearms/weapons prohibited.
Right there, and at the time, what I was doing in that picture was against the City of Tucson ordinance, and I challenged that was taken on the 4th of July in about 2004. At the time, it was illegal in Tucson to do that. I marched back and forth through that park with the firearm. There were cops in the park, and they just kind of smiled and said absolutely nothing. I was actually looking to challenge it at the time. That's why I did it. And well, actually, I did it because it was the 4th of July. But I was perfectly willing to have my name be the challenge case. And the cops, one of them saluted me. It was kind of fun. Parenthetically, later in 2003, I actually did challenge Tucson's Guns in the Park ordinance based on state law because preemption had changed. And I ended up nose to nose with a very, very good Tucson police lieutenant by the name of Jim Stoutmeyer, who listened to what I said, got a copy of the ordinance, read it, realized I was right. It didn't ban guns in the park if you had a concealed weapons permit. And later that week, TPD had an in-service film, What to Do with a Man in the Park When He Claims It's Legal. And every Tucson cop had to watch it until the ordinance changed, and we strengthened preemption again, and they couldn't regulate guns in the parks at all. So that was a fun exchange. That story is on my website if you want. It's on libertywatchradio.com. I think it's on either the gun page or the blog page, one or the other.
And I get one more comment in here real quick. And Larry over on the Facebook side says, speaking of flintlocks, after all, they were the assault weapon that took down the British. They were. Absolutely they were. All right, guys, we are coming up on the top of the hour, and so I think we should start with giving plugs out. Charles, I'm going to start with you, man, if you would. Tell everybody about Liberty Watch Radio. Anything else you'd like to plug, bud?
My program is Liberty Watch and America Armed and Free Radio. I'm locally on KVOI in Tucson on Sundays. It's streamed live through kvoi.com starting at 10 in the morning on Sundays, Pacific Daylight Time now. We're actually on Mountain Standard. We don't change our clocks. So right now we're on Pacific Daylight until daylight changes, then we'll be Mountain Standard. But anyway, you can listen live at kvoi.com and click on Listen Live. It's a call-in show, and I do give the number. And then if you want to listen to the archive, it's on libertywatchradio.com and click on the recent shows and the last 6 months of the program. And it's updated. It's current up as of last week. And they're all there if you want to listen to. The left column is the Freedom Hour. The right column is the Gun Hour.
And for those of you who may be viewers or listeners of Polite Society Podcast, you may not know it, but you hear Charles every week on the show. When there is an ad that runs for JPFO, Charles is the one, his voice is on that ad. He's the one that produced those ads.
Right.
Dan.
And if people need ads, they send me a script. I'll send them a produced ad within 24 hours. I voice it, I mix it, I do everything you need. I'm sorry, Dan, I walked on you.
That's okay.
Dan, again, tell us about Good Gun Bad Guy. Tell us about the loaded mic. Anything else you want to plug, bud?
Yeah, well, okay. So first of all, Good Gun Bad Guy. Here's the book. Good Gun Bad Guy. This is the first book. I know, Paul, you have the second and third book with you. Good Gun Bad Guy is my book series, and it's you can find it at goodgunbadguy.com. I talk about the anti-gun crowd. I reveal their strategies and tactics and how they use their techniques and propaganda and rhetoric and everything else to change the way we think about guns in America. So goodgunbadguy.com is for the book series. The show, The Loaded Mic, lots of fun. Got to check out The Loaded Mic. It's at loadedmic.com. And that's our weekly web show. Lots of great Second Amendment news and stuff on Second Amendment, Second Amendment information. So, and then we get into topics of the day. So lots of fun political talk. Also, if people are able to be in Dallas, Texas by the end of the month, I will be speaking at the Gun Rights Policy Conference as well as the AmCon event. And I know, Paul, you're going to be there. We count on you for all the technical stuff. And so if people can get there, there is actually, I have the flyer on my website. If people want to go to goodgunbadguy.com, they can see the flyer for the event. Goodgunbadguy.com.
Dan, is your book available as an audiobook?
Yes, the first book, it's a 3-book series. The first book, Good Gun Bad Guy, is available on Audible. It hasn't been there very long. We just actually put it up not too long ago. So yeah.
So you have a way of producing those?
Yeah, we have a pretty big studio here in upstate New York where we do a lot of it's called Wos Corp Media, and we do a lot of the Second Amendment work that I do. We host two web shows at our studio, so we have 2 different sets. We do a lot of voiceover work, even television commercials we produce. So lots of stuff going on up here. We're in Burton Hills, New York. It's called Wos Corp Media.
I got to tell you, man, I did one audiobook. I produced one audiobook, and never, ever, for the pay that I got, never, ever, ever, ever again.
It's tough.
It's a big number that I got paid, but when you average it out by hour, I think I got about 38 cents an hour.
I like editing audio.
Oh, I enjoy it too, but with what they wanted, holy cow! Yeah, no, thanks, not for me anymore.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot of stuff to consider. You got to get the debreathers, you got to get the dehummers, because every time when we talk, there's a breath in between, and you don't want that in the audiobook. Getting that stuff out is sometimes difficult. Compressing and getting your files to the right size, and for Audible and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not easy, but
it's a challenge.
Yeah,
it is.
It's a challenge.
It is. On my end, I'm going to say, go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
On my end, I want to say thanks, everybody. This is going to wrap up the week of broadcasting for us here. Thanks for watching. Next week, we're going to have regular broadcasts Monday through Friday. And next Saturday, we're going to have another train wreck. I already know just because of the guest lineup. Beth Alcazar, Tony Simon, Mike Piwowarski are going to be our commentators next weekend. When those 3 get together, I barely am able to maintain control at times. So
it's going to be fun. Don't miss that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're all great, by the way. They're all fantastic, and they're all at the top of their game. So that's going to be a good show.
The week after that is GRPC and AmCon. So the next week, regular week. The week after that, I'm going to be doing a bullet on Monday, and then the whole thing shuts down as I tear the studio down and we drive down to Dallas. So one last thing, if you are planning on attending AmCon, which is the Second Amendment Mass Media Alternative to Mass Media Conference, if you are in Second Amendment media, if you are considering becoming a Second Amendment media person, and you want to attend, fantastic. We'd love to have you. Deadline for registration is tomorrow. We have to shut registration down, so we have numbers to give to SAF so we can provide everybody's lunch. And if you are registered and you attend, you have a chance to win a Taurus handgun that will be given away. But you've got to register today or tomorrow.
Where do you register?
It's at AMCON, AMMCON.org/register.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. So if you want to attend, you've got to register today or tomorrow. We have to shut registration off after tomorrow. That's going to do it for me today.
amcon.org/register.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
You betcha. Let me make sure I told you right. I'm going to go ahead and enter that in my browser. Yeah, and it just go, okay. Let me amend that. Go to amcon.org and there's a register tab at the top.
Okay, thank you.
So, all right, that's going to do it for me today, folks. We're just a touch late, but not as late as we usually are. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thanks for commenting, and we will see you next week.